welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya master Anne-Marie Young. This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And Anne-Marie, we were just talking before we got started here. We were both looking forward to this one, right? Because I don't know about you. I've been an admirer of the Gary Chapman love languages for a relatively short time compared to other people, but I've really come to appreciate the ideas behind it in the last year, particularly because I took the survey and it actually nailed me. I said, "Whoa, okay, yeah, this is pretty good stuff." But I'm curious, Avery, what do you like about that so much?
Sorry, my internet's only just let me join, so I've missed everything that you've said so far.
I was just saying that we were looking forward to this conversation with our guest today because of his take on Gary Chapman's love languages. And I was explaining that I liked it because I had learned quite a bit about it in the last year or so and found it to be very accurate. But I was curious to know what you like about it.
Isn't it wonderful when you just learn more about love and how to give it to people and how they will receive it, how they would best appreciate it? It's just going to make the world a better place, surely. So that's what I like about it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. So let's bring our guest in here. His name is Paul Zolman, and his book is A Role of Love. He has taken the Chapman, the 5 love languages, and taken them to a different place. We're going to be learning more about that today. But Paul, first of all, welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you, Walt. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Nice to be with you today.
We're glad to have you. How did you get on? How did you get on the love language tack? That's an interesting tack to get on.
Well, it really started quite some time ago. I grew up in a childhood of abuse, and I had this thing with anger that I would stack an annoyance on top of annoyance on top of annoyance, and then I'd flash. And so I wanted to get rid of that. So I started reading the color code. I read the 5 love languages, and from where I came from, it was really foreign to me. The 5 love languages, as much as you might love them, Walt and Anne-Marie, they're really great principles, but it was foreign to me how to practice that. And so coming from a background of abuse, it was very difficult. What I wanted to do is I wanted to replace that angry behavior. I couldn't just say, I don't want to be angry. I couldn't just do that because that was attracting basically more anger. It was a negative, and it was just not working. Positives works with you to make you move, make you motivated to do something different. And so I started reading the love languages, and I really liked the principles because I'm Christian, and Dr. Gary Chapman said that those principles reconciled to the life of Jesus Christ. And I as a Christian, I wanted to be more like him, more kind, more gentle, more loving, more. We can go through the love language. Jesus spent time with people. He served people. We have his words. He touched people, and he had the gifts of the Spirit. So he had all 5 love languages, and he practiced all that in his life. So I wanted to be like that, but I just couldn't figure it out. From Dr. Chapman, all I could gather is that if, Walt, I guessed what your love language is, and I catered to that, we're going to be buddies. I'm a horrible guesser. It wasn't happening. And so that didn't work for me. So the next thing I did was I take that love language test and find out what I am. Well, Anne-Marie, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. What am I supposed to do? Advertise? Hello, I'm Gifts. What do you have for me today?
You'll need a badge.
yeah, exactly. I need a name tag with what my love language is.
I'm Anne-Marie, give me presents.
So that didn't work for me either. And it's a bit awkward trying to establish what love language. And I found that if I told somebody what my love language was and they were sending it back, it almost felt duty bound. To me, that did not feel like love either. Just absolutely didn't feel like it. It did not feel genuine. It felt like they were duty bound. And then the other thing that Dr. Chapman did that I had a hard time reconciling with, I'm a numbers guy, and so I say reconcile a lot, but the hard time I had with if I gave my love language away, expecting it to come back, someone's going to recognize it and send it back. That's the reciprocity of that seemed to me like a transaction. And a transaction to me was not love. It's business. I mean, I give this to you, you give me this back. It's like, let's make a deal. And Monty Hall's back. And it's just, what do you got for me? And it's just that sort of thing. That didn't sound like love to me. So what I figured out was that if we send it out without any regard of it coming back, that's more like love. But we're trusting that that it's going to come back. It's just that boomerang. It's just one of those natural boomerangs. It's the law of the harvest that you plant seeds, they grow up and they'll provide fruit for you in that way. So there was an incident that several incidents in my life, but one incident, I was dating probably 15 years ago. In fact, this anger I was talking about a little bit earlier actually was part of the demise of my first marriage. My wife and I had 8 children, and after 23 and a half years, she decided, she still looked very young, very fit, very petite, and she started going back to college. And as she's going back to college, the boys are hitting on her, and she's telling them she's 28. And so they're loving life, and she's loving life, and she's having a great time. And it just wasn't really conducive to our little family right there. And so it ended the marriage, but my anger was probably part of that as well. And so I became single. While I'm single, I'm doing all this destination dating, what I call destination dating. I didn't go to the UK, Anne-Marie. I wish I could have. That would have been a fun date. But I went, I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and I went to Daytona Beach, Florida, and Jacksonville, Florida. I went to New York City. I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, Atlanta, Columbia, South Carolina, Kansas City, Nashville, Salt Lake City, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Cabo San Lucas. All these cities and a few more. Went to all these cities trying to find love. And I felt like that song, looking for love in all the wrong places. It was just one of those things that I was trying to look for it. And it's really kind of interesting that way, that you really can't look for love, but you can send it out. And this is where I started realizing the direction of love. That as much as Dr. Chapman talks about it, and he changes direction within the book, it was confusing to me. It's more like 10 love languages, because there's 5 you send out and 5 you're looking to get back. Even though they might be the same, it looks a little bit different when they're coming back. And what I found about that is that while I'm dating, I'm feeling, after this destination dating, I'm feeling kind of lonely, and my sister calls me out on it. I'm a thorn between 2 roses. Out of 10 children, I'm number 10 of 11 children, and I'm between 2 sisters, older sister, younger sister. All the rest are boys, and so I'm the youngest boy. And so I didn't have the opportunity to walk up to the television and turn the knob way back then to change the channel. I didn't have the decision-making power. It was always my older brother's older sister. So I always have to listen to older brother, older sister. And it's kind of that pecking order anyway, even when we get together. So I'm calling her on the phone. She's talking to me, calling me out, thinking I'm lonely. She has a neighbor she wants to introduce to me. Now, this neighbor, I didn't know anything about her, but she was 7 hours away from where I was living at the time. I was living in Phoenix at the time. And I thought, I don't want to do this destination dating. And I told her that. And she says, oh, come on. And like you said, you got to do what Big Sister says. And so I started doing the light corresponding, started writing email and writing these letters to her and messenger. No phone calls at that time. And then it just kind of was fun. It was actually really quite fun. I wasn't expecting anything to come out of it, but that's when you really find what you want, is when you have no expectations that way. And it was just really fun that way. So I kept doing that. And finally I moved up to where my sister was at and started dating a little bit more seriously. Came to the point that now I need Big Brother approval. Like I said, number 10 of 11 children. I had to go to Big Brother's house, 300 miles north of where I'm at, and went in this house. And first thing that he did, or his wife did, my sister-in-law, is pulled her aside and said the only emotion that the Zolman family learned growing up was anger. At first I denied it, said, and it made me mad. Busted. And so from that point, I thought, there's got to be something I can do to correct that perception for the Zolman family. Because I think that we were a lot better than what she was saying. It's not only anger, but we had other passionate things. Anger was an issue, but it's not the only issue. I say that's funny. But anyway, so anger. So I started reading that color code, reading the 5 love languages, and I've told you a little bit about that. I remembered during this time that as a family, even as dysfunctional as we were as a young family, that we liked to play games. And games seemed to bring us together a little bit. And I thought, what if I could make this a game? So I contacted Dr. Chapman and asked him if he was licensing those icons for the love languages that he had. And his attorney sent me a letter back saying, no, they're not doing that. I was grateful because they're like 30 years old. They're dated, and it was something that weren't that attractive. But so I decided to make my own. And I went to a copyright attorney in my town. He said that theory, like the love language theory, is not copyrightable.
Sure.
Application is.
Yeah.
So they hadn't made it a game. And so what I did was I just put it on a die, and I put the love language on the die there. So there you see time, service, the words, touch, gifts, and there's 6 sides on the die. So the 6th side is surprise me. Or I live close to Las Vegas, so some people call it dealer's choice, or mystery. So
mystery.
So there's just 2 instructions. You roll the die every day. That's the love language you practice giving away all day that day.
Oh, okay.
All day to everyone. Remember, I created this when I was single, so I did not have a significant other, as Dr. Chapman suggests. I didn't have anybody to practice this on. So I said, well, why not everybody? And as I thought about it, doing it to just your significant other really is kind of a part-time job, because you're not with that person all day long, all the time, every minute. You're not with that person, but you're with other people a lot. So I thought, well, let's make some consistency, make this a character trait that we're going to be sending love out all the time, all day long. And so as I've done that, and as you do it over a 30-day period, you actually learn all 5 love languages backwards and forwards by giving it away. One of the best parts about that is that you can see it when it comes your way and respond appropriately. Like I said, most people can only see their primary love language and respond to that because that's what they want. They think that's only love. But with this, it gives you that peripheral vision. It says, oh, they're loving on me. It's not my primary love language, but they're loving on me, and I can respond appropriately. So it really gives that expands your vision a little bit. The second thing that happens is that actually you become what I like to call a love language linguist. Sexy title. I know you want it on your resume. So it's one of those things that when you have that on your resume and you go into the employer's going to say, what the heck is a love language? And you're going to say, well, I just love people. That employer wants their customers loved, and they want a loving environment within the workplace. And your resume should rise to the top because of those 2 things. So that's kind of what I've done to make it happen a little bit better here.
That's cool. I like that. I mean, certainly it's very important to be appreciative anytime any of the 5 love languages come your way. And that's really what you're talking about, expressing an appreciation rather than, oh yeah, oh, great, wonderful, let's move on to the next thing. Or even worse than that, oh, what are you doing bothering me with that kind of crap? And any of those reactions really aren't serving you or the other person. They're not really helping anybody. But when you're appreciating all of them, it doesn't even matter whether it's a big deal to you. It could be a big deal to them. And that appreciation goes a long way. It's really a good thing.
Absolutely. So as I'm trying to figure this out, the other day I was walking around my home here, and I found a walking stick. You don't usually find a walking stick when you're walking around, but I found one. And on one side of the stick, it's really nice and smooth and everything. And on the other side of the stick, it's got some little where maybe a twig was, but it's got these little points in where it's kind of got some knots. I'm going to call it the naughty side of the stick, and the nice side of the stick. I'm sure Santa Claus has a stick just like that.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
So just think of that. What I found out was that anger and that culture of anger that I learned as a child was on that naughty side of the stick. And I wanted to run. I absolutely wanted to run from that. But I could not run until I realized where I was on the stick. So if the naughty and nice is a spectrum, and I'm on the naughty side of the stick, how do I get over to that culture over there and I figured out anger has its own language. Anger has its own humor. Anger has its own nuances that way. And it's biting. It's really biting. It's hard. And people, they retract from it. They don't want to be around people that are really angry like that. Found myself being just like that. So I wanted to learn those love languages, and I wanted to learn the humor, and I wanted to learn the kindness and that whole culture. And so it was just determining, once I determine where I'm at on the stick, I've got three choices. I can stay the same, I can go to the left, go be more angry, or go to the right and be more loving. And when I say stay the same, the way anybody stays the same is they can blame somebody for what is wrong in their life. If you can blame someone, you don't have to change. It's their problem. It's their problem. So you don't have to change, and you can stay put right where you're at. And that's kind of the difficulty I had, is I was blaming my father for any failed parts of my relationships, any social awkwardness that was going on, anything like that was going on. I blamed him till about age 35. And then I woke up, I thought, oh, I better start taking responsibility. At age 35, he'd been dead already 7 years. I'm still blaming him, and he has absolutely no way to defend himself.
There's a great piece of information in there too. Like you said, he had already passed away. He wasn't even part of the physical world presence, and yet you were still blaming him, which kind of illustrates a very important point. We like to think that blame hurts the person that's being blamed, but more often than not, it hurts the person doing the blaming. It's not so much half the time the person being blamed doesn't even know they're being blamed. I mean, they're just not even in the room at the same time. So they're not affected at all. It's the person who's doing the blaming that's doing it. We kind of skip over that part, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure my father, he's on my shoulder and he knows I'm blaming him, but I can't hear him. He's not talking to me. And it's not because he was trying to be out of touch. I'm sure it's because I was more out of touch than anything.
And that also shows the value of the shift. I mean, I know and understand what you were saying. You were saying that you were kind of in one place, you hadn't really gone anywhere. But I think actually probably all of us, when we're blaming, we're taking steps backward. We just don't necessarily recognize that we're taking steps backward. But you decided to start taking steps forward. Do you remember what made you make that shift?
Well, like I said, it was my sister-in-law really was the impetus for that. But I just decided, enough of this. This is real, and obviously even if you decide that, you're going to have some failings along the way. But I decided that I was just going to keep pursuing the love languages, figuring out a way. How do I implement this into my life? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of why I call it the role of love, ROLE, because it really changed me inside. And I'm going to tell you that it really was a miracle that within 30 days of rolling the die every day and consciously watching for those opportunities to love all day long, what happened to me was I didn't have any time to say, what's wrong with that person, and go down that critical path. I did not have any time to get annoyed from whatever they were doing and be flashing. Didn't have any time to do that. So what the mindset was it changed to what's right with that person. What can I love about that person? And that was just a whole brand new mindset to me. With that, over a 30-day period, becoming a habit, and I've kept doing it all these years. But that 30-day habit changed my whole disposition. I did not have a disposition to be angry anymore in that way. I felt like I was getting out of my own lane when I was looking at what other people were doing, which I have zero control over, looking at what they're doing and trying to be critical about what they're doing, which I had no control over, I was being judgmental about that, and it stopped. It absolutely stopped. I found the behavior that would stop that in its tracks, and it was the replacement behavior of love.
It's funny how these things work out, because I don't plan the weeks of broadcasts and who's going to be on the show. I just kind of let things go the way they're going to go. I trust the law of attraction to deliver something really useful or interesting to me. And sure enough, it just did again without my realizing it, because I had forgotten you were coming onto the show today, and I have a show scheduled tomorrow with my good friend Joel Elston, and I was thinking of a topic. I said, "What topic should we do tomorrow?" And I said, and it just kind of came to me. I know. Let's do a topic on when people say, "I don't mean to judge anyone, but," and then make that a topic. And here you are talking about the exact same thing. Like, wait, well, no, that's for tomorrow. Wait. But I guess it goes to prove, it actually is an everyday topic, and it's one that people engage in regularly and often don't realize that they're doing it. I find that, and I don't know about you. That's what I find. Anne-Marie, do you find that people who use that phrase are aware of what they're doing? They're self-aware of their own phrasing?
I don't think they are. I mean, the person I hear it most from is my 7-year-old, and she's always like, "I don't mean to be rude, but don't mean to hurt your feelings, but." And it just makes me laugh, because I'm just like, "But you're gonna." But I certainly know that when I say it, I know exactly. As soon as I say it, I'm like, "Duh. I don't mean to, but I'm going to anyway." And I catch myself doing it. And it's a very uncomfortable conversation in my head going on when I find myself doing it. But yeah, I don't think people are aware they're doing it. And we of course, we make judgments. That's just our human nature. But I love the fact that if you can make those judgments and out of love and out of appreciation and out of an unbiased situation, then that's such a nice place to come from.
It's a better place. And what I found out, Anne-Maria, instead of trying to say, "I don't mean to do this, but," and I don't mean to, I'm going to teach you how not to hit, but I'm going to spank you. I mean, it's just like that. It's just parents fall into that trap all the time. The one thing that I found is that I question their behavior now. I just say, "You're really going to do that?" And instead of making any judgment, I'm just asking the question. I'm just asking, "Are you really going to do that?" And it's just, "Oh, okay." And maybe they back off a little bit, or maybe they decide that they're not going to continue with the behavior that they're going on. But it's just a question, and it's not a rude question. It's not a more or less not a really a challenging question. But I'm saying, just, is that what you really want? And then it's back to sending it out. Whatever you send out, it's going to come back to you. Just take, for example, anger. You send anger out, you're going to get immediate return on that investment.
This is true. Mm-hmm.
Who wants that? Who wants that? I mean,
actually, you're going to get more than a return. You're going to get an escalation.
Oh, yeah, you get it 10 times or more.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I want to ask you the same question, Paul. Do you think that people who use that kind of a phrase, I don't mean to judge, but do you think they're aware of what they're doing?
I don't think they are aware, and it's just, people say, "I don't mean to gossip, but did you hear what Susie did?" Or they're always saying that. It's always happening, and it always is. I don't know why it's a segue to that, but it happens. but it happens.
It also leads to another question in my mind, and I'm kind of curious again to see what the take of both of you would be on this, because I was asking myself, we live in a reality where we need to be able to tell things apart, and to a certain extent, that's what judging is. The thing that judging also brings in is a little moralizing and pointing of fingers and looking down the nose and all that kind of thing. But I remember having a conversation with a co-host one time about this, and came to the conclusion that there's a difference, in my mind anyway, between discerning and judging. Meaning, discerning is judging without the morality, without the wagging of the finger. It's just, "Oh yeah, this is an X and that's a Y." That's a discernment, as opposed to, "Oh, that's an X." We don't want any of those X's around here. We got to stay away from them. They're just bad news. So when I look at it that way, then I ask myself this question: are people who discern, are they actually trying to cover up that they're judging?
Walt, I don't think so. I think that's very important that boundaries be set, and I think that discerning where those boundaries need to be set, determine what you're going to do, and determine what your path will be, and if it's within those boundaries. As far as looking at other people, again, it's in their lane, and it's really they have their own agency, they have their own their own free will to choose what they're going to do. And that's why I asked the question, now, are you really going to do that? Because it's more of they're still in their lane, but it's like the guy that's right beside you, and he's not putting his blinker on, but he's moving over into your lane. And are you really going to do that? You're really going to just cut me off like that? And then people will do that. They'll do that, but you just have to be aware of what they're doing at the time. Still stay in your lane. I think it's sticking to the principles that you've got, and just staying within the boundaries that you've set for your own life. That and hopefully those within those boundaries, it's going to bless the lives of a lot of other people. You're going to be a gift to them in many different ways, and that's where a crossover comes. But as far as choosing for them what they're going to do, we don't have the ability to do that, and that's a realization I came to. That's on the naughty side of the stick. Just take, for example, the word sarcasm. Naughty or nice? What do you think?
What do you think?
Which side of the stick is it on, Walt? Yeah.
I'm the queen of sarcasm.
Well, and I know it's funny and people love it and it's great humor and all that.
But yeah, you have to be very gentle with it. I have to rein it in.
Well, absolutely. But the way to recognize what's on the naughty side of the stick and what's on the nice side of the stick is figure out what's the opposite. So the opposite to me of sarcasm would be authentic. And do I want to be more authentic than sarcastic? Or do I want to be more genuine than sarcastic? And then, like I said, set your course. Where do you want to go? What do you want to send out? Because whatever you're sending out, come right back to you.
I was thinking about some of these T-shirts you see about, I'd rather be naughty than nice and things like that. So, I mean, you can go a lot of different directions with that one.
My wife showed me the one the other day, a picture of one that said sarcasm is my love language.
Yes. Yep. I'm sure that's probably a popular T-shirt, actually. Now that I think about it,
it's very popular out there. This really applies in a lot of circumstances. You've seen people in yoga outfits, and they're going to their class. At the end of the class, the teacher will put their hands together and point north and put their thumbs to the chest and bow their head and close their eyes and say namaste. Mm-hmm. Now, namaste is of the Sanskrit dialect in northern India, but the Hindu interpretation of that was the God in me sees the God in you, or the divine in me sees the divine in you. And that's kind of the feel that I want to have with the roll of love and with the dice, just that we're watching for what's right about those people. What is there that I can express? How can I help them uncover maybe some of the talents that they don't even see themselves? I see some beautiful things in that person. How can I express that to that person so that they see it too and they feel better? But what you're watching for when you roll the die is you're watching for people that light up. When they light up, you've nailed their love language. Yeah. No longer do you have to stop the relationship, say, wait a minute, could you please take this survey so I know how to love you? Yeah. You don't have to do that anymore. So as awkward as that sounds, it's and as funny as that might be, you don't have to do it. You're just watching, use your observation skills, watching when they light up, and then just make a mental note and wash, rinse, repeat, do it over and over again.
There's a lot to be said, too, for that lighting up experience. Mm-hmm. Not only does it inform you of what the other person responds to, but it also informs you of how you affect somebody else to have them get that response. It serves both functions. It tells you. I always look at it from the point of view of what it's telling me more than about myself, rather than what it's telling me about them. Mm-hmm. Because if I can say something that results in somebody else lighting up, I think to myself, whoa, what did I do? I mean, that's so cool. I want to do that again.
Yeah, absolutely. And there with that, Walt, comes an awareness of yourself, just self-actualization again. What did I do? And this dice really adds intent, adds purpose, adds kind of a theme to the day. What am I doing that day? And as far as that theme goes, I like to roll it in the morning. Then in the evening, I've prepared a journal that you can write what you rolled that day, what opportunities you saw to love in that way that day, and then what you did about those opportunities. I found that when I look at a blank page in a journal book, my mind goes blank. This is more purposeful. It's a love journal. And so when you keep track of what you rolled, opportunities you saw to love in that way, and what you did about those opportunities, it becomes a love legacy journal. And that, just take that one more step. In the primary school years, this would probably be most effective, that we teach the children their responsibility. Remember that it took me till age 35 to realize, oh, I'm responsible for my own stuff. I'm responsible for my own actions. If we could teach that in the grade schools, in the primary schools, teach them and have the class roll the die at the beginning of the day. It takes 2 seconds to roll the die, maybe another 30 seconds for a teacher to say, class, we're watching for these opportunities this day. Then at the end of the day, at the very end of the day, when the kids are anxious, they know the bell's going to ring, they want to go home, and that last 10 to 15 minutes, I've talked to several teachers, they said it's absolutely non-productive time. If we can take that non-productive time and make it productive, have them write what just opportunities they saw to love, what they did about the opportunities. Now we're teaching them accountability. What did they do all day long? How did they love, especially all day long? And I think it would really tamp down a lot of the misbehaving that happens in school, a lot of the violence that happens in bullying, tamp all that down because they're being taught to love. And it's on a pass-fail basis. Did you do it or not? Did you write the journal page or not? And the teacher sends that home. So the parent collects all those journal pages, and over a period of a year, now you have a love journal of first grade. You have a love journal of third grade or fifth grade or whatever grade. You now have a love journal of your child. I would have loved to have a love journal for myself from first grade. I remember Mrs. Rogers. I remember my teacher. It's been a long time ago, but I remember her very distinctly. She was very old, but she was just very kind. And she reminded me a lot of my grandmother as a teacher. And my grandmother was a teacher. And it's just those endearing moments that I would have loved, just even some little tidbits of what did I think of Miss Rogers during the school year? What did I do about those things, how I felt about her, and did I bring her an apple? What did I do to express love to that teacher during that time period?
I would actually suggest that rather than having the kids do this, I'd rather have the teachers and the parents and the administrators do it. And the reason I say that is because we found over and over again, kids actually are really quick at getting a concept and running with it. They don't really have to have it drilled into them. They get it fast, mainly because they haven't lived very long, so they don't have all the baggage in place that stops them from wanting to do stuff. It's the adults who've been living for years and years who got all the baggage built up, and they're the ones who have the most trouble with it. So I would submit the idea that if you really want to make change, you want to change it in get the parents and the teachers and the administrators to make the changes in themselves. If they do that, I think the kids mimic it. I think because adults have that kind of energetic impact on kids. So I mean, is it the lack of a journaling exercise that makes the kids violent or unhappy or fighting or whatever in school? I'd have a hard time making that argument. I'd be much more inclined to say it has a lot more to do with the interactions they're having with the adults on a regular daily basis. So get the adults to make a change, and I think you'll see a big change in the kids. I like the idea of what you're applying with the die and with the journaling, because what you're doing for an adult is you're helping them to establish a new neural pathway and then reestablish it and reestablish it and reestablish it, and just keep basically burning it into the nervous system until it completely replaces what used to be there, which was probably some pretty judgy, nasty, junky stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you make it a freeway instead of just a country road or a cow path.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yes. Good way to describe that. Yeah.
I agree. It has to be practice like that and just make it a broad stroke that way. And I'm absolutely in agreement with that. But how do you reach them? How do you? And I think that we got to start somewhere. And if we can start with the kids and help the kids will help the parents, and they'll call us out. They'll say, no, that's not right, and they actually they know who to call. When I was a child, it was like Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call? I did not know who to call for the abuse that I received as a child. I didn't know anything about that. I thought that's in the family. It's just kind of a family deal, and you don't call anybody. You're embarrassed, and you just put your tail between your legs and you go to your room or wherever you're sent. And it was just that type of situation.
My question to you, Paul,
go ahead.
is I'm quite interested to know how, if your whole family dynamics was anger, and that's everybody's kind of natural love language, and what impact did you learning all this and doing all this have to your siblings?
Well, I think that many of my siblings actually learned to break away long before I did. And I wasn't,
Right.
And had their awareness, because I'm number 10 of 11. I'm just a late bloomer, and they'd already. Some of them have stepped out and done it, but some of them just still retain a lot of that anger, and they'll have these flashing moments, and it's just as far as purposefully doing this and purposely moving away and just divorcing myself from that type of activity. I'm probably the most pronounced of all my siblings.
Interesting.
It's an interesting thing also when you have that kind of a legacy going on, because your siblings, since most of them were older than you, were impacting you. It's kind of in a way that's similar to the way an adult impacts a child. So not only were you getting it from adults in your life, you were getting it from siblings. You were getting it at all. Like, oh my God, it's coming from everywhere.
Well, you become really resilient that way, and children are very, very resilient, and they'll grow up in spite of their background. They'll grow up to do something, and hopefully they'll choose to do something that's right. I think from the Christianity standpoint, that really has kept me more safe than any other thing. There was a time I remember in junior high, I was going to join a gang, and I forgot the Hool. Last name was Hool. Was the guy, Hool, and he was the leader of the gang. I can't remember his first name, but I was going to join his gang, and we're going to beat up people, and we're going to just have a great time. And then I was going to join the mafia. I do have some Italian in my blood. Yeah, we came from Connecticcut and Rhode Island and Connecticut, and right in that area where you're at. And it's just I just thought, well, maybe they'll let me join, since I have some blood of Italian blood. Maybe the mafia will let me join. And so there was a rebellious time there that I could have gone horribly the angry way, but snapped out of it. Thank goodness.
Yeah, it's a good thing. And because if you've met anybody who is in those circles, they're not pleasant people to be around. I mean, irrespective of the activities they are involved in, they're talk about having a lack of love language. You can't connect to them on any way. The only level of connection they know is violent. Well,
and it's always Billy Goat Gruff. I lived in Rhode Island for 2 years, and actually faced a lot of that. And boy, if you didn't have Guido in your pocket, you just if you didn't know somebody that broke knees, you weren't going to make it. So anyway, yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. Providence, especially Providence, Cranston, that area. Yeah, it's an interesting state. It's a beautiful state. It's a great place to go for the oceans and so forth. It's lovely for that, but it does have that other side. That's true. Yeah. Let's explore also from the perspective of people who have decided that they need to make changes in their lives. And this is a theme that we carry on a lot here on the show. People who want to make changes in their lives, and they're finding they're getting stuck in some way. I imagine that the approach you've taken helps people who are stuck to become unstuck. But do you find also that when they take this approach, that they're gaining other benefits besides that like takes them to the next level, besides the unstuckness of doing this kind of journaling and die rolling and so forth?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a really good question. That the people in my what got me stuck, just from my own point of view, and I see it with other people, is they think it's about them, and this really changes the whole thing. It's not about you, and it really, as soon as you get over that idea that it's about you receiving love, you're going to be really kind of on your path, because it's about sending it out and just watching the reactions of people as you send it out. And if you're making someone's day, it's really like a payday for yourself. You'll be paid later, but on that day, you'll also be paid for making someone's day. What's going to happen with that? If you make someone's day, they're going to also make someone else's day. It's like the pay it forward, just that philosophy. Just you're paying it forward, but you're just doing it on a regular basis, sending it out, sending that kindness out. I've been in the corporate world in my life, and I was a CFO of a public company. But one of the things that I remember most distinctly was about the bosses that I had that actually were very kind. They weren't bosses that made you feel stupid or made you feel dumb when you made a mistake. They were bosses that said, let's try it this way. And that was just the kindness of the direction and the leadership that they actually give. And I think that as we're stuck in life, we need that leadership. We need that mentor. We need someone that we can look to, someone kind that is going to hold our hand and take us to the next step. And I think those are the people that we want to gravitate to. Those are the people we want in our repertoire of friends that are going to help us to the next step. And so it's I don't think you're going to be stuck for very long if you collect friends around you like that, collect an employer like that around you, and then maybe more difficult than I'm saying. It was there were various employers that I had, that some were nice, some were very stern, some were upset. But if you're going to be upset with someone, how's that going to turn out? Are they going to want to be very motivated to work harder and be happy and in their job? More likely, they'll do it grudgingly, and they'll start looking for other places to work. It's better to send it out with kindness. Help people just get over that. Help them on their way. They don't know everything, and you don't know everything either.
That's true. Yeah, I learned that a long time ago. Not only do I not know everything, I found I didn't know anything. So, I had a lower level to start from.
Well, and then you got a good starting spot. Yeah,
yeah, right.
You're like a sponge. It's getting it all.
And then I learned something like, oh my God, I learned something. This is great.
So Walt,
go ahead.
What I like to do is I like to compare it to a magnifying glass. And a magnifying glass is just going to make things bigger. And if you've got that magnifying glass, focus on the faults or the weaknesses or the misgivings of another. Do you want that to grow bigger? You're actually focusing on it because you want it to make it smaller. Wrong idea. You focus on the good. That's what's going to get bigger. That's what you want to magnify. Focus on the good that your employees do. Focus on the good that your family does. Focus on the good that your children do, even if it might not be up to par. Just focus on the good that they've done, and then just help them do it a little bit better the next time. When you focus on that, that's going to grow, and that's what you want to grow.
You're bringing a really interesting point here that we've talked this idea of focus. We've talked about that endlessly for years here on the show. Anne-Marie has been a part of many of those conversations. I don't remember a time when we also pointed out that focusing is a magnifying process. It really is. It is a magnet, but we don't really talk about that part of it, which is really interesting. Can you think of why? I mean, how did we miss that?
It's strange because, like Lewis always used to say to us, like, focus on what you do want, not what you don't want. But the actual that when you focus on it and focus on the good and enlarging, it's so simple, but we haven't discussed that.
No, but it does magnify. That's what the whole law of attraction process does. I mean, when you give your vibrational attention to something, it just keeps increasing the vibration of it. Well, yeah, that's the magnifying process. But somehow we skipped that part. I don't know how we did that. Well, thank you for bringing that up, Paul. This is like a good addition to what we talked about. As you were
saying it, I was thinking of ways I could use that differently to what I'm doing now that aren't working. and what I can do now. So yeah, it's definitely that little nugget's going to help me.
It's a little bit of a reminder too, because you really do want to pay attention to what you're giving your focus to for the exact reason that Paul just described. If you give your attention to something that you really don't want, you're magnifying what you don't want. Are you sure you want to magnify what you don't want? Like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that part. Yeah, but
it's going to get bigger.
We laugh at it, but it's really pretty important, because how often do we do it during the day anyway?
We do it all the time, and it's unfortunate that it's without thought. And it's the same thing that happened with me, Walt and Marie, that while I'm being annoyed, I don't remember going down that path, but I just remember the knee-jerk reaction that it was, and that's all it was. It was a thoughtless knee-jerk, almost a reflex reaction that happened when I flashed, when I became angry. And I felt really bad after it. Said, how did I ever get there? And then I, as I started asking myself that question, then I started retracing the steps. So, I was annoyed here, stacking that up, annoyances up. And I didn't tell you this part of my story, that my father was a truck driver, and he was born in 1922. His father passed away when he was 10 years old, and he was number 6 of 10 children with my grandfather's second wife. My grandfather's first wife died after childbirth of the 9th child. So my grandfather had 19 children. My father scaled it down. He only had 11, and I scaled it down just some more. I only have 8. So and my children only have 3 at the most. So it's working. It's working. So
it's working.
Is anybody else wondering how expensive Christmas is?
That's definitely a line item on the budget. So my father, at 10 years old, it's the middle of the Depression. Here we have 19 children now that the grandfather has abandoned. Obviously, death is not a choice abandonment, but it's just still an abandonment of sorts. And it's in the middle. It's in 1932. It's in the middle of the Great Depression, and my father's got to go to work. He only finished his 8th grade and never went back to school. Became a truck driver, so he's gone during the week. At the end of every week, he came home, and he would always date my mother. I absolutely love that about my father. He would every Friday they went out on a date. He wasn't very creative. It was always the Maverick Bar. It was always over alcohol, and I can visualize in my mind what was happening there. A couple gets back together after an absence there, and say, "How was your week? How was your week?" And my mother just goes down in pecking order. And my dad's getting annoyed, and now we're down to Paul. And now he's really annoyed. I'm number 10 of 11, so I'm the last boy. And now he's really annoyed, and I get the wrath. And I just hated the weekends. I did not look forward to weekends at all, because it was either the belt or a severe spanking.
Wow.
And it was just in that situation, it was just very hard he was focusing on what was wrong. At the time, I didn't even know didn't remember what I'd done wrong to get the punishment that I got. It was just that when he came home, he had horns on his head, and he was it was a bull in a china shop.
Yeah.
And it just was bad.
Yeah, it really had nothing to do with you. I mean, it obviously did have something severe to do with you, but really had nothing to do with you. It was him bringing his own stuff with him.
Well, and it's interesting too that it's generational. So this when these 9 children were born, they were born in Indiana, in the middle of the United States, and when the grandfather's first wife passed away, he decided he was going to sell out. He's going to sell the farm. He's going to sell all the equipment. When people came to the auction and bought something, he said, "And would you like this child? And would you like this child?" And he systematically gave all the children away except for one. And he took Benjamin with him to Montana, where he found his second wife, my grandmother, and my father's mother, and married her, had 10 children, of which my father was number 6. And so it was just there was mental health issues way back then. And so it's more generational, not genetic, but more generational. And so they pass on what they know, as all parents are passing on what do I know? What am I going to pass on? What legacy will I leave my children? And the last question they're asking is, how will I be remembered? And maybe that's unfortunately, the last question. They should be asking that first question. So how do I want to be remembered with my children? What legacy do I want to leave with my children? And the journal would be very helpful. I wish my mother would have written a journal, or my father or my grandfather or my grandmother had written journals. Instead, I've got the weather, what the weather was like 60 years ago. About what the weather was like 60 years ago. I could have read an almanac about that. So anyway, I would have loved to have a love journal.
Yeah.
Something more about their life, about what was there to love and what did they love about life. Instead, I think that what passed on generationally was the complaining of how hard life was. And it was hard. Obviously, it was hard. But it's, again, the focus. Where is the focus? Is it on the hard times? Do you want to magnify it? Want to make that bigger? We don't, but we do.
That generational passing on also can be really, really hard for the succeeding generations to overcome in their own lives, because when it's passed along generationally, it gains a power far beyond what it was for the very first person who experienced it. The more it gets passed on, the more vibration it picks up, to put it in vibrational terms. And so, I mean, it can be, first of all, very challenging to overcome. It can also be hidden. I mean, in your case, it wasn't. It was pretty clear it was out in front. But in many cases, it could be hidden in a way that the succeeding generations receive it, and they don't even know where it came from. They never, they would have had to heard stories that they never heard about what happened, with their parents or their grandparents or great grandparents, and so now they're stuck with these vibrational essences, and they don't know what to do with it, and they keep finding themselves repeating patterns, and they don't know why they keep repeating them. I mean, it's really quite the challenge. So that's where I'm thinking that the kind of thing you're talking about, when you have a new tool that you can take that basically just start shifting your own vibration. Fortunately, it doesn't even matter where it came from. You can still overcome it, even if you don't know what the source is, even if you don't know how it came about earlier on your line. You can still turn things around just by changing your own behavior on a day-to-day basis. And that's the beauty of what you're proposing here with your 5-sided die plus one. What'd you call the 6-sided? You had like 2 or 3 different descriptors for that one.
Surprise me.
Surprise side, yeah, surprise me side, right. But in combination with the journal, and I like the journal aspect in that journaling. I mean, we've talked about journaling in many, many forms, and journaling is very, very powerful as a way to basically take the vibration out of the vibration, to detune it, to take the sting out, to take the impetus, the power, the momentum out of it. So when you combine that with your daily practice of using the die to say, I'm going to give I'm going to give gift today, or I'm going to give service, or I'm going to give, whatever the die comes up. When you combine those two things together, you're really taking some substantial steps to shift your own vibration, your own experience, your own attitude, everything. So, I mean, well done. You came up with a really cool tool there.
Oh, and it's fun. I love the randomness of it, because you don't know until you roll the die, what am I going to focus on today? And it just kind of excites me every single day. How am I going to love today? Oh, yay. I'm watching for physical touch. I'm doing the high fives, the fist bumps, the hugs, whatever. That's what I'm doing that day, or whatever it is. I'm very excited about sending it out that day, just to be able to find somebody that I can light up. And it's just, I didn't make any connection of what I did each day and lighting people up. And it didn't really focus on lighting people up every day, on helping people have a better day. Never, ever focused on that. It was all about me. And that's what I say. This is how you get unstuck, Walt. This is how you take it to the next level. It's all about them. When you focus on them and you get excited and passionate about focusing on them, it's going to be a great day.
And you're going to have the residual effect that it's going to have an impact on you when you don't even expect it to. It just kind of does.
It's like that piggy bank. You're putting money in the bank, and it'll come back at a certain time.
Yeah, that's very cool.
It's
really
fun.
good stuff. I'm glad you've been sharing with us. We need to ask a couple things of you before you part company with us. First of all, I mean, you actually have a few things here. You have a book called The Role of Love. You actually have a workbook that goes along with that. and you have the die. Give us like the rundown on this stuff.
So the book is all the backstory that we've been talking about today. Lots of examples. For example, there's a family in there, family of 5 children. The youngest was 4 years old. One day he rolled physical touch, and he said, pumps his fist, jumps up and down, and said, "Yes, physical touch, physical touch." Had some older brothers, and immediately start beating up on him. No, it was funny. It was absolutely funny because it was a teaching moment for the mother. That must have been how those older brothers did express physical touch to that younger brother. So it was a teaching moment, not only for the younger boy, but for the older children as well.
Sure.
So this would be appropriate physical touch. So there's anecdotes and stories in the book like that you'll find, just helpful hints, lots of suggestions of what to do. And then I've inserted some quotes from Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and Mother Teresa, other people like that are very professional, being very lovely. I can't really say professional because I'm not really a professional, but they're very seasoned in doing that sort of thing. The journal, again, is just keeping track of what you're doing. You just want to be able to record and leave that for a legacy. If you could look back 10 years from now, look back to what you loved now and reflect on it 10 years from now, I think you'd have a lot of great stories to tell your children, your grandchildren, stories of love. That's the legacy. And hopefully that's the choice. That's what you want to leave with your children. You want to leave a loving taste in their mouth. You don't want that bitter taste of any anger or anything else.
Yeah, good stuff. For somebody who wants to follow up with you personally, maybe they have questions for you, something that they want to share. Maybe they're looking for a piece of advice, whatever. What's the best way to reach you? How can people find you?
They can comment through my website. It's rolloflove.com. And again, we're using the word ROLE of love. It's kind of a play on words because you actually ROLL.
Roll the dice, yeah, right.
Roll the die, but we're chained, and that's outside of you. The role of love is the change within. And there are different roles that way, roles of observation and different roles of love. We go through that in the book. But it's rolloflove.com.
All right. So we'll make sure we'll include that in the show notes as well so that people have an easy way to find a link. One of the other things that I like to do on a regular basis now, I've been doing it for about 1.5 years. Everybody who comes onto the show has found something they really want to give. That's why they're on the show. And as a result of that, we're now living in the 21st century. We're living with the internet and social media and there's content creation, there's podcasts, there's all this stuff that people who are trying to help other people are putting out there. And you're one of those people. You came onto this show, you're giving on this show, and I'm sure there are other ways you've been giving as well. One of the things that has kind of gotten lost along the way is recognition that there are many people that you've never met, you've never seen, who are consuming what you're talking about, and you're helping them, and you never find out about it. And you never really get any recognition for it. So I like to kind of turn that around and say, on behalf of those people you've never met and you've never seen, thank you for what you're doing, because you are making a difference in this life. Thank you.
It's a fun project, Walt, and it's really kind of a lifelong passion now that finally here I am. I'm ready to take this passion and run with it. This is what I've been looking for to do my whole life, and I had to learn it from the opposite end of the stick. I had to learn it from the naughty side of the stick to make it over to the nice side of the stick. And I have a long ways to go. I have a lot of catching up to do. So it's more to come.
Well, that's part of being alive. If you're not growing, you're not alive. It's pretty straightforward.
Exactly.
Anne-Marie, tie this whole thing together. I mean, what's the one thing that, if you have to pick out one thing out of that conversation, what's the thing that you think is the biggest takeaway for listeners today?
That whole conversation, I have been reflecting the whole of that conversation on this, on that, on my history, me going forward, what I want to do. So I think the nugget was the magnifier, and is just magnify the good, magnify the love. You can use it with any stage of your life. So just focusing and magnifying what you want, not what you don't want.
Yeah, I'm with you totally. I mean, I still don't understand how we skip that part. All this.
I know.
Paul, I've been doing this show for 11 years. 11 years I've been doing this show. We haven't brought out magnifying. I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. How did I miss this one?
Well,
Just going through.
that's my love sending it out to you guys today. Thank you.
I
Well,
appreciate
it's
that.
received with abundance back. Thank you.
Yes, no doubt about that. So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.